now we're going to start algebraic proofs, and this isn't particularly difficult, but it helps us a lot when we write two-column proofs for regular geometry, or for geometry later on. So, when we write a two-column proof, we're literally going to make two columns, and the one on the left is going to be statements, and the one on the right is going to be reasons. Now you'll notice in the proof it gives you a given and a proof. The given is the actual equation, and the proof is actually the answer. So if your last statement, you solve it and don't get -2, then you know you've made a mistake. Alright, so as we're looking at this, the first thing we write is always the given. So we copy that down, so you can't miss that part. Copy this down. And your reason is always given. Okay, now we're going to go about solving the equation one step at a time, but not showing any of our work. So the first thing we do is we distribute. That gives 9 minus 3x equals 10x plus 35. So now we need our reason. Okay, I misnumbered this. Your statement 1 needs to match reason 1. So statement 2 needs to match reason 2. Okay, so reason 2. How did we go from statement 1 to statement 2? Well, we used the distributive property. Okay, now we're going to continue solving, but we can only do one thing at a time. So most of you might say, well, let's add 3x. So let's do that. That gives us 9 equals 13x plus 35. So again, I didn't show any of my work. I just wrote what happened, and I can only do one thing at a time. So when I do that, I added 3x to both sides. So the property that says you can add the same thing to both sides of the equation is the addition property of equality. Okay, now you do need to write of equality. You can abbreviate like that. You got to write the whole thing out. All right, next step. And here there's only one logical step. I have to subtract -35. So when I subtract 35, I'm going to get -26 equals 13x. So since I subtracted the same thing to both sides of the equation, this is going to be the subtraction property of equality. Okay, step 5. Now I'm going to divide by 13. I got to be real literal. I can't move things to the other side. So this is -2 equals x. So I get 5 for this reason 5 is the division property of equality. But I'm not quite done because I'm only done when my proof statement matches my last statement exactly, and this doesn't, so I have to flip it. So I'm going to rewrite it to x equals -2. And the property says that I can change the side of the equal sign is the symmetric property. Okay. Now, this isn't going to get much harder, but just different things come up, so that's what we're going to practice. So let's look at example 2. So I'm going to start by writing my statements and reasons. And then step 1, the first statement is always your given. And your reason is always given. Okay, step 2. I would like to clear the fractions. When you clear the fractions, I'm going to multiply everything by 4. So 10 times 4 is 40. 4 times 1/4 is 1. But when I clear the fractions, I don't change anything in the parentheses. So that stays as x plus 8. Now, when I clear the fractions, my reason is not clearing the fractions. My reason, well, I multiplied both sides of the equation by 4. So the property says that you can multiply both sides by the same number is the multiplication property of equality. So that's what we write when we clear the fraction. All right. Step 3, now I got to distribute. I know it seems like you shouldn't have to write this all out, but when you're proving, you got to write every little step. So we use the distributive property. And 4 subtract, whoops, where did I make a mistake? This is 40, there we go. Subtract 8 and we get 32 equals x. So that's the subtraction property of equality. And then last but not least, this doesn't match exactly, so I flip it, so I get x equals 32, and I'm able to flip it using the symmetric property. All right, next example. Example 3. All right, so we have our statements and our reasons. Statement 1 is our given. Reason is given. 2. I think everyone can see that next we're going to distribute. So I get 12x minus 3 minus 8x equals 17. So that's the distributive property. Oops, 2. Okay, step 3. Now I have to combine like terms. So 12x minus 8x, which gives me 4x, minus 3 equals 17. Now, some people want to say, well, that's the subtraction property because you subtracted 8. But the subtraction property means you subtracted the same thing from both sides of the equation. We didn't do that. Okay? We just combined like terms. So that's what we're going to write. If you want, some people like to abbreviate CLT. It's fine with me. Okay, 4, then you got to add, so we get 4x equals 20. That is the addition property because I added 3 to both sides. Number 5, I divide, so x is 5. And that's the division property of equality. Okay, now we're done. Over to the back of your notes. Okay, one more. We're going to practice clearing the fractions, and then you can try one on your own. Statements. And reasons. Number 1 is the given statement. And reason is given. Number 2, we have to clear the fractions, so we're going to multiply everything by 4. So 4 divided by the denominator here of 4 is 1 times 3 would be 3x. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 divided by this denominator of 2 is 2 times 3 is 6x. Plus 4 divided by this denominator of 2 down here gives us 2 times 9 is 18. So now, if you remember, for clearing the fractions, we write the multiplication property of equality. Okay, pause the video and finish the proof on your own. Okay, now, not everyone's proof is going to match exactly like this, but here's the idea. You need to move things around, moving one thing at a time. I very intentionally subtracted the 6x to start so I could get my x's on the left so I wouldn't have to flip it in the end. But if you don't do that, it's by no means wrong. All right, I want you to pause the video now and do example 5 on your own. Now remember, you're clearing the fractions, so you're going to have to multiply everything by 9. I'll tell you that as a hint. And when you clear the fractions, you don't multiply anything that's in the parentheses. Okay, here is the proof. So I cleared the fractions by multiplying by 9. I didn't change anything that was in the parentheses. I distributed and then solved from there. On this one, I didn't get all the variables to the left, so I had to do that at the end. Now, one more thing I want to bring up that wasn't in your notes that's going to come up in your homework. Let's say you're solving, and for one step you have 3x equals 2. Just kidding. Oh, that's what I'm going to say. 3x equals 6. Well, then your next step, you're going to say x equals 2, right? You know that you don't write x equals 6 over 2. This is the work. You just do it in your head. So by the same logic, if I have 4x equals 10, I'm just going to write x equals 5 over 2. I don't write x equals 10 over 4 because I don't show my work. It's just to go from one thing to the other when you're in a proof. Okay, you get to do your homework.